Heyo, busy brain. Welcome to the Busy Brained Saint podcast, where faith meets focus. I'm Kamden Hainsworth, an expert ADHD coach, here to help you understand your mind with confidence. God knows your brain perfectly, so let's explore that divine design together and discover just how fulfilling your life can be, living with God and ADHD. Hello, you made it. I'm so happy that you are here. My brain is busy and my heart is full. Today's podcast episode is titled ADHD Symptoms Are the Problem, Not You. A couple weeks back, I was listening to my mentor give an incredible podcast about all this data that she has gathered surrounding ADHD and relationships, which if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you know is a massive hyper-focus of mine. I absolutely love talking about ADHD and relationships. So the fact that she's doing all this research and has a book coming out, you should get on her wait list. Her name's Kristen Carter. Is so exciting. And so I was really excited to hear what she had to say, her report on all the findings. I didn't make it through 20 minutes of the podcast without having to turn it off because I became so intensely emotional. I became very dysregulated, and it had everything to do with the dichotomy or the multiple hats that we wear when we have ADHD and we experienced being a person and a child and an adolescent with ADHD. And now we are raising adolescents and children with ADHD and not knowing which hat to put on as I was listening to this podcast. And like I said, I became really dysregulated, became very hopeless in the kind of parents that I was being, because in her sharing a whole bunch of studies, and most of her questions were on a scale, I think of 1 to 5 or 0 to 5 or something. And so it would be filled with questions like, how often did you feel supported with your ADHD? How often did you feel like you were a burden, or that you were too much, or that did you have parents or people in your life that could help you calm your emotions and emotionally regulate, etc. And so I'm raising preteens right now, and I'm doing a lot for them. And you can imagine how much time I'm trying to put into teaching them these skills and helping them understand about their ADHD brain, and not shaming that, but also calling attention to the fact that sometimes we just can't trust our mind and the emotions inside of our body to be the ones that are going to get us to our goals and the life that we want, and helping them manage that under the pressure of hormones and social pressures and comparison that happens at this age. It's very complicated. It's a lot. Even for somebody who has dedicated a really big portion of her life for the past however many years to this work, it's still really difficult, because in the end, I'm just mom. And I don't want to say just, but I'm not their coach. They don't show up to an ADHD coaching session and I'm just their coach. I'm their mom. And so there's somebody that I'm somebody that they just need to be real with a lot of the time, and they don't really want to hear the advice from. Hard things happen in homes, and we have children with really big behaviors and some really complicated and layered situations that we're still trying to get a hold of. And hearing all of that made me feel very, very disparaging. It was very much in despair and hopelessness and maybe self-pity, but more so just feeling completely overwhelmed with the task of being a parent to a neurodivergent child and multiple neurodivergent children who should quote unquote know better. If you've been there, can I just give you a virtual hug? Can I just hold your hand and tell you how much you are loved? I am not getting paid for this, but I have joined a group called Mothers Together. It's essentially a Marco Polo group for women who have children with neurodivergence and who don't have a place to turn because all of their friends and family will never understand what they have to face day in and day out. And I have been blown away by how incredible this platform and this group of women have been. And it's been a little overwhelming at first to get used to using the app, but like I said, they don't even know that I'm making this plug, but it has just meant the world to be with other women that experience the same thing. That's a little side note. So if you are hearing this, and I can be that person for you right now, if you're relating to what I'm saying, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we were having to go through something so hard. And also, a lot of this is not on you to fix. A lot of this is going to have everything to do with you helping people grow up in a safe and loving enough environment, a healthy enough environment that they're able to find themselves. And that can be a really painful process. So I put away the podcast and I went and cried and I went and talked to this group called Mothers Together and told them about how I was feeling. And then about a week later, I came back to the podcast and I said, I'm going to try and listen to the rest because I really am interested in what they have to say, because these are the experiences of adults who grew up with ADHD, and it's about relationships. So relationships with self and parents and romantic relationships and friends, etc. And it's really interesting to me, and it's really important to me. And it explains a lot about who we are when we understand this. And so I went back a second time and I kept listening. And I was more prepared for what I was stepping into. I was feeling a lot more regulated that day in my parenting and in my parenthood. And I'm so glad that I stuck around and I came back to it, because she made a really important point at the very end, toward the end of this podcast. And she said, a lot of the symptoms and the behaviors that we choose with ADHD are problematic, but we are not the problem. Our children who have ADHD are not the problem. I am not the problem. I don't point to me and say, I am untrustworthy. I am inconsistent. I am too much, too loud. I am not enough. I don't look at myself and label myself with these things. I look to the behaviors and say, ooh, that inconsistency, or that showing up late, or that not finishing that report, or that promises that I'm making to people and not following through with, that can be problematic, those behaviors. But that is not me. Those are the behaviors that I'm having to learn to manage. And this distinction and differentiation made a world of a difference while I was listening to the results of this survey that Kristen did. And I felt like it was really significant enough that I wanted to bring it to you all today. And this doesn't have to be a super long podcast, but that message alone, I think, is something to really digest. When you're listening to this podcast, when you're in coaching, maybe you're on one of my mini sessions with me, or maybe you're a full-time client of mine, and we are working on, let's say that you have something that has needed to get done for a long time, whether that's a house project or some legal paperwork you need to fill out, your taxes, a communication you need to make with your boss, whatever it might be. And you've been putting it off and putting it off. Do you recognize that's part of ADHD that makes it difficult for you to prioritize, number one, and then to manage the emotions surrounding that difficult task, number two, and then number three, figure out what your next steps are, even like breaking down the tasks within the task? All of that is really hindered by an ADHD brain. The exact things that can allow me to build garden boxes within a day and a half or 2 days and all of a sudden have a garden, that the very same creative energy and impulsive energy is the same stuff that makes it really painful for me to have to fill out a 12-page psychological evaluation to turn into the doctor. And so we don't get to just pick and choose, but we also don't have to make it mean something about ourselves. In the same way that we sometimes negatively tell ourselves, I am a dysregulated mom, or I'm a mom that can't handle X, Y, and Z, and a better mom would be able to. We also need to be careful to not elevate ourselves above other people that can't hyperfocus and say that we're better than them because we need less sleep, or we're stronger than them because we can, do a project for 4 days straight. And we don't need to elevate or put ourselves below other people just based upon things that we do, based upon behaviors. But we often do this. You say, you're a lazy person or you're a productive person, when it's no, the symptoms of how your brain operates, that's what's actually happening. So the behaviors that you're doing are productive behaviors. And the behaviors that you're doing over here are less productive behaviors based upon a certain expectation. I've always been very jealous, envious of people that understand math really well and that can just catch on super quickly, because I actually really love math and I love science and I love learning the intricacies, but my brain doesn't hold on to that information and those processes the same way that another brain does. And so the same way we might measure smartness, right? That person is intelligent because they can hold on to these mathematical ideas, instead of saying they can do higher level math quite quickly. That's not who they are, though. And we do this to ourselves a lot. So the basis of all of this idea, albeit very brief, is that the symptoms can become problematic, or the symptoms can become really something to highlight. But that doesn't make you who you are or who you aren't. In my understanding, God is who made us, who we are and who we aren't. And when we know that we belong to heavenly parents who gave us this opportunity to learn and grow in a pretty intense environment, and who trusted us to experience life and to make decisions and to learn from decisions and choices, and then to someday return back to them and be able to report on what we learned, none of that actually changes the fact that we are God's children and that we have the Spirit and light of Christ within us. None of that changes that Christ suffered and bled and died and lived again for us. He didn't say, I'm only going to do this for the people who are highly productive or for the people that know how to do math really well. He didn't say, I'm not going to do this for the people that are super creative and don't have a brain that prioritizes things. He also didn't say, I'm not going to do this for the people who have really mathematic brains and can hold on to math equations. He said he would do it for everyone. And to differentiate that we are not the problem, but that our behaviors can become problematic and then they can learn to be managed. That doesn't mean that we need to be managed, that we are unmanageable, that there is something innately wrong with who we are. It's simply the behaviors that need the attention. And the more that we understand where the behaviors come from, our trauma, our pain, our emotions, our thoughts, the setup and makeup of how our brain is organized, expectations that no longer serve us, etc., the better we can understand why the behaviors are happening, the more easily and more directly we can begin to manage them and help our behaviors shift and change into results that help us get closer to our goals and live more honestly based upon our values. I am so impressed by the people that I get to work with, by many of you who send me emails every so often or DM me on Instagram. I'm thankful for the podcast reviews that many of you are leaving these days. And if you have not done that, please do it. It really does help a great deal. Share this podcast with people. I am so impressed by you. and how individual each one of you are, and your strengths and your challenges. And that isn't actually who you are in the end, because when I'm with you face to face, I see a person who is having an experience. The experiences are just simply what the person is doing and going through. But to know the person themselves is a lot more intimate interaction than anything that could be said about behaviors that person does. We want our behaviors to reflect who we are, but I don't know if we'll quite ever get that perfect. The times when I have felt who a person is, once again, often has very little to do with what they are doing or not doing. And it has everything to do with who they are being, how they show up, the brightness that they bring, the weight that they might carry in their eyes. That is when I start to get a real sense for the person in front of me. And it's an absolute privilege to be able to connect with clients that way and to learn that way. I just feel like it's such an incredible opportunity that I enjoy my work so much, and that I feel so filled and learn so much about how much God loves each one of us through that work. If you haven't had a chance to meet with me, I would love to meet with you. Please schedule a free mini session. We really do dive into what you're experiencing in your life. We can talk about behaviors that you want managing. We can talk about who you are as a person. We can talk about who you would prefer to show up as in your actions and behaviors more frequently. You'll come away feeling lighter. You'll come away feeling more supported and understanding your mind more. And that's free. That's always the expectation. If you want to know more about my coaching afterward, I'm happy to tell you. But this is how I give back to our community. You deserve to be seen and held by somebody who doesn't see your behaviors as who you are. Please know how much I love you, and I'm always cheering you on. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Busy Brained Saint podcast. If you're eager to explore the world of ADHD coaching, make sure to connect with me on Instagram at Kamden_ADHD or visit my website, KamdenADHDcoaching.com. For more LDS-specific ADHD content, don't forget to follow this podcast and join us on Instagram at The Busy Brained Saint. Listen, I'm here to support you on your journey. I cannot wait to have you as a part of our community. Stay engaged, stay inspired, and remember, you're not alone here. Thanks for being a part of the Busy Brained Saint family.